All right, so we officially have the first Donald J. Trump mugshot that dropped, came out of my home city of Atlanta, Georgia, obviously dealing with that ongoing case against him for illegally or using illegal methods to try to overturn the 2020 election results. And so here you have it. I mean, I'm sure by this point, most of you guys have already seen this picture, but, he decided not to smile. I think that was probably a mistake, but he chose to go with more of this, like, very serious blue steel kind of look at the camera. And this was actually pointed out by Sagar over at Breaking Points, but this is apparently the picture that he's trying to model himself off of when he was doing like the preparations. He said he wanted to go with like a really like determined look to his face, and he sort of was trying to mimic this World War II Winston Churchill picture from way back in the day. And so, I mean, I don't know, you guys tell me, did he hit it on the head? Did he completely flop? Was this a disappointment? I mean, there's a lot of hype surrounding this as we were getting up to the lead up to this actually officially dropping, or even some people on Twitter who were like passing around fake pictures that were coming out, which, like, fuck you guys. I mean, we were all waiting for this big moment, and then, you have people who are circulating just completely, photoshopped fake mugshots and shit. So we also had this aspect of the story, which I thought was interesting. Apparently, according here to Politico, that he raised $7.1 million directly after this mugshot dropped. So, you may get the inclination of like, is that potentially, is this mugshot actually going to help him? Is this going to backfire on the crooked, radical left Democrats who are trying to use political persecution to throw their political opponent in prison or something like that? Well, I got some data here for you guys that we're going to get to in a second that is kind of going to disprove that, because it looks like the overwhelming majority of the American people, in a very bipartisan way, think that he's guilty of virtually all four of the indictments that are currently against him. So I find it, to be a pretty big stretch to say that this is potentially going to backfire against the prosecution, or that it's somehow going to help Donald Trump win the 2024 election. It might help him in the meantime in terms of fundraising. It might help him a little bit with his, MAGA base in the Republican primary, but it certainly, I don't think, is going to help him in the long run, especially if he does come out as the victor for the Republicans and ends up going head to head with Joe Biden again. But we also had this, which I thought was a pretty big aspect of this. He made his official return to Twitter, or I guess not really returning to Twitter. He left Twitter and then he's coming back, and now it's X.com, according to Elon Musk, and he decided to throw this tweet out. Now, I mean, keep in mind the last time that he was actually on Twitter was January 8th, 2021, where he said basically, I'm not going to the January 20th inauguration for Joe Biden, and then he just went completely dark on the platform. Obviously, he was banned for a little bit, but they brought him back a while ago, and he's just chosen to stay over on his own platform, Truth Social. But he basically just posted this, a link to his website, mugshot with a date on it, election interference, never surrender, and then again his website link there. And so now, with that being said, I mean, you guys have my take on the mugshot itself. Again, don't think it's going to help him with his 2024 general election prospects. I mean, he could definitely still win. I don't want to mislead people and say like Joe Biden is going to absolutely clobber him over the head. I don't think he will. I mean, if you look at the polling data right now, even after all four of these indictments have been dropped, he's still virtually tied with Joe Biden. In some polls, maybe Joe Biden's up by like 1, 2, 3 points. But at this time, during the same period in the last election cycle, Joe Biden was up by, 8, 9, 10 points. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be a closer race this time. And it's not as if like the 2020 election wasn't close at all. It was just, a couple 10,000 votes here and there in a couple different swing states. And he easily could have stayed in power. But now I want to move on to this aspect of it, because again, not only is he sort of like selling merch and fundraising off of this, but he's also getting an absolute slob job over from the ghouls on Fox News. So I got a couple of clips here lined up from some recent segments. First, we got Jesse Waters, who is basically just going to do like the corporate media version of saying like no homo, and then proceeding to again like slob all over somebody. So here is Jesse Waters from Fox News.
I am now going to book the Fulton County photographer for my Christmas card because Judge, and I say this with a unblemished record of heterosexuality, he looks good, and he looks hard, and I am now going to...
He looks good. He looks hard. I mean, tell us how you really feel, Jesse. I mean, listen, again, this is kind of like what their job is on Fox News, although there was a big period of time where, especially under Rupert Murdoch's leadership, they really wanted somebody like Ron DeSantis. Maybe they're still pushing for somebody like Nikki Haley as she's sort of rising after the first debate, but they definitely, over at Fox News, like as a network, the executives, they don't like Donald Trump, but then you still have some hosts here who are sort of like audience captured in a way where he can't go up there and be honest with people. And I don't know if this is actually what he believes here or if he's just choosing to jerk off Trump because that's what his viewers want to hear. But either way, I mean, it's just pathetic at the end of the day. I mean, it's embarrassing at the end of the day. And we had another one here that I think was even more hilarious. And this was something that Jesse Waters was saying as well. But basically, it looks like a lot of them are trying to go with the sort of spin on this that, like, not only is it going to be good for Donald Trump just broadly, because he's fighting against the deep state, he's fighting against, the radical left Democrats or whatever, and they're unfairly prosecuting him, but apparently they think that notion of an unfair judicial system is actually going to cause black Democratic voters to swing over to the Republicans. Let's hear their explanation here for why that might be the case.
That mugshot situates Trump in a cultural context that I'm not sure his enemies may have anticipated. Now he joins Frank Sinatra, he joins Elvis Presley, he joins Johnny Cash and Tupac Shakur. And he didn't only know some of these people, meaning he is now seen by non-political folks as a rebel, an outsider with swagger. And as one black lady I spoke with earlier today here in New Orleans said, Trump's a gangster. And that means he has cred among a new block of voters that perhaps have never given him a serious look, and now they're looking again. That mugshot.
I mean, it doesn't get more embarrassing than this, right? Comparing him to Tupac, comparing him to Elvis, to Frank Sinatra, right? People who actually are cool people, right? I mean, they actually do have a little bit of credibility to them because, I mean, first of all of them were like actual, musicians. They were rappers, they were entertainers and shit like that. But I mean, Donald Trump, he doesn't have that same backing. I don't know why he would make that comparison. If anything, I think that this makes him look even more ridiculous next to those other people that you just listed. But I mean, this is kind of the line that they're going with. And again, it wasn't just, over on Laura Ingram's aspect of the show. This is something that Jesse Waters was saying as well, basically trying to imply that, like, well, if we can just get, 5-10% of, the black vote to think like, oh, the judicial system is unfairly targeting Trump, as if that's like comparable to like the centuries of oppression of African Americans in the United States, that somehow this is going to be the thing that gets them to vote for a candidate like Trump, who is, first of all, I mean, if you want to talk about just like the judicial system in the US or like mass incarceration, right? Another thing is that a lot of these Republicans have been complaining about the quality of our jail system, our incarceral system here in the US, specifically when it relates to people who have been arrested for what they did on January 6th. And it's like, okay, the left has been talking about, mass incarceration. The left has been talking about a rigged judicial system. The left has been talking about the quality of our jails and our prisons here in the US and how decrepit they are and how, horrific the conditions are that we subject people, especially people for just minor offenses like drug charges or something like that. They never said a single word about it. If anything, all of their policy agenda is geared towards increasing the mass incarceration within the United States, right? Dumping billions or millions of dollars into police budgets, right? Building new jails, building new prisons, cracking down on, bullshit crimes, wanting to continue the drug war, etc., right? I mean, the idea that like people are going to look at Donald Trump and a guy who's probably the single most obvious criminal in American history, right? One of the most obvious con men and frauds in American history, and that they're going to turn around and say, oh, he's being unfairly prosecuted. And I can relate to that because of the history of racism and institutionalized discrimination against black people in this country. I mean, it's laughable at the end of the day, right? But that's the narrative, that's the spin that they're trying to go with. Now, what's the actual reality? Well, here's just some recent polling data. This was from Ipsos and Politico, and they basically just broke it down case by case. So they say, do you believe that Donald Trump is guilty of the alleged crimes? And it looks like just 1,000 adults in the United States. So sensitive documents case, yes, is 52%, no is 25%, and I guess the rest of that, about 25%, is also just unsure. So it applies to most of these other ones as well. But the sensitive documents case, I think that's probably going to be the easiest one to prove. It seems pretty open and shut. with him basically just lying to the feds and keeping some of these highly sensitive classified documents down at Mar-a-Lago when he knew that he wasn't allowed to. And then you had this whole cover-up thing where he was trying to, delete any of the evidence on his servers that they had moved around these boxes and all of that stuff. So this seems like it's going to be the easiest to prove. But again, vast majority, not a vast majority, but, if you're comparing the yes to the no answer here, I mean, it's, again, not even close. A slim majority believe that he is guilty on that. 48% to 23% believe he's guilty on the falsifying business records. On the federal 2020 election subversion case, 51%, again, a majority, say he's guilty. 26% say no. And then on the Georgia case that we were just talking about with his mugshot, 51% to 26%. So, I mean, essentially a majority of the American people believe that he is guilty on all 4 counts here. Okay. And, the highest you have here on any of these cases is only 26% in terms of people who believe that he's not guilty. So I guess this is the 26, 25, 23% that Fox News is trying to appeal to there with those clips that we just saw. But I mean, there you have it. We got Trump's official mugshot. It's still yet to be seen how these cases are actually going to play out. The timeline on them is going to be pretty interesting as well. It was just announced, actually, that in one of these cases, I'm blanking on which one, but basically the judge just came forward and said that the trial date is going to start on March 4th of next year, which is literally one day before Super Tuesday. So that's going to be absolutely insane as a situation, right? Trump having to go into these elections literally a day after having to show up for one of these trials. So, I mean, again, it's something that you could say, okay, maybe, it's going to help in the primary with his Republicans and rallying the base around him. I think you could definitely make a strong case for that. But, the American people, I mean, overall, if you look at the polling data on this, they overwhelmingly think that he's guilty of these things. They overwhelmingly think that he should face some sort of penalty for these things. And so I guess the implication there is that, if you're talking about independents, if you're talking about certainly Democrats, if you're talking about even some, slightly more center leaning Republicans, then it just seems like there's not going to be enough of a coalition that can simply ignore these charges, that can ignore the potential that Donald Trump is going to be literally charged as a criminal with the 90 plus current charges that are against him. I mean, that's something that is definitely going to have an impact, and we're just gonna have to see how it goes from here.